Buenas tardes a todos. Buenos días, perdón, que tal, ya me acostumbré a que tenemos durante esta semana casi todos nuestros eventos por la tarde. Entonces, buenos días, gracias por conectarse, gracias por hacer parte de este foro Fulbright que hemos organizado como cierre de este gran tour de la transferencia social, organizado nosotros con nosotros la Red Rumbo y con Fulbright, la Comisión Fulbright Colombia, ¿vale? Yo soy Pablo Rosso, soy el gestor de comunicaciones de la red Rumbo. Vamos a darles un par de indicaciones para quienes nos encontramos acá en el Zoom y para quienes nos acompañan también a través de YouTube, les voy a hacer un par de indicaciones. Nosotros vamos a tener este evento principalmente en el idioma inglés. Para los que están acá en el Zoom, ustedes pueden acceder a una traducción simultánea al español en todo momento. Si ustedes quieren seleccionar ese idioma, tienen que ir a una opción que dice interpretación, que va a tener como un mapa mundi como icono, como logo de ese botón, ¿listo? Van a la parte de interpretación, seleccionan el canal español y ahí encontrarán la traducción de todo este foro. Muchas gracias entonces a quienes se siguen conectando por acá. Les doy entonces ahora la siguiente indicación. Eh, para manejar de manera más organizada las preguntas, tenemos acá un icono que dice preguntas y respuestas. Dediquemos en ese espacio únicamente las preguntas que le queramos hacer a los panelistas del foro. El chat lo dedicamos para cosas como nos está escuchando bien, muchas gracias, saludos desde tal parte. Todo lo que no sea preguntas, ahí lo ponemos en el chat. Lo que sea preguntas, en la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Con eso nuestra moderadora, nuestros expertos van a tener mucho más sencillo y más accesible el tema de las preguntas y con eso vamos a estar más organizados todos. Para los que están en YouTube, les voy a indicar que esas preguntas nos las pueden poner en el chat y nosotros se las haremos llegar a los organizadores acá del evento. ¿Listo? Como les decía, esto hace parte de un gran evento que hemos organizado durante las últimas 3 semanas, que es el Tour de Transferencia Social Fulbright Rumbo, el cual pues hemos ido reportando a lo largo de todas estas semanas en nuestras redes sociales, en nuestros canales de comunicación, en nuestra página www.rumbo.edu.co, donde podrán encontrar todo lo que fueron estas 3 semanas donde Tasha nos ha estado acompañando como nuestra experta Fulbright, dándonos varias enseñanzas frente a cómo interpretar de una forma distinta nuestras investigaciones, ese modelo que nosotros tenemos al investigar, también compartiéndonos su perfil como psicóloga y todos los avances que ha tenido como para que nosotros vayamos también teniendo nuevos aportes y vayamos creciendo también en otras perspectivas sobre la salud mental. Eh, Hoy nos pueden acompañar comentando, escribiendo, haciendo parte de esta conversación con el hashtag Tour de Transferencia Social Rumbo. Ya vamos a conocer a nuestros panelistas, vamos a conocer a nuestros expertos, pero primero le voy a dar la palabra a Juan Mauricio Benítez, que es nuestro director ejecutivo, quien nos va a dar un saludo institucional y una gran introducción a lo que ha sido, a lo que es este foro y lo que ha sido ya este evento del Tour de la Transferencia Social. Gracias a todos los que se conectan nuevamente y te doy paso, Juan Mauricio.
Pablo, muchas gracias y nuevamente muchas gracias a todos los que se conectan. Y yo antes de contarles un poco la dinámica de hoy, lo que vamos a hacer hoy, quiero empezar por los agradecimientos porque a veces en este evento ya de cierre se nos pueden olvidar algunas cosas, pero nunca se nos puede olvidar agradecer. Agradecer es muy importante siempre y hemos tenido un equipo detrás muy grande apoyándonos, pues no más que grande, muy comprometido apoyándonos. Entonces, pues primero a los externos, a Claudia del Castillo, nuestra traductora simultánea, quien nos ha acompañado durante estas 3 semanas. Muchas gracias por tu compromiso y por tu apoyo en toda la traducción. Yo sé que el trabajo de traducción no es fácil y menos el de traducción simultánea. Así que gracias por ese apoyo, por ese compromiso con todos los eventos. Um, Tasha, thanks for your time here. Has been 3 wonderful weeks of a lot of work, a lot of lectures, and a lot of learning from like we take from you, and we really appreciate that. Quiero también agradecer a Fulbright por darnos este espacio, a Juan Andrés que ha estado acompañándonos durante todo el proceso. También quiero hoy agradecer a la Universidad EAN, quienes nos apoyaron en la estructuración de este foro y también en algunos temas de la visita, especialmente a Santiago Castañeda y Angélica Virgüez de la Universidad de EAN y por supuesto a Sara Vera, que es nuestro contacto muy fuerte en la Universidad de EAN. Dentro del equipo de Rumbo, pues a María Clara Sánchez, nuestra coordinadora de proyectos, quien tuvo a cargo toda la agenda académica, también a Pablo Rosso, nuestro gestor de comunicaciones, quien es el que los has llenado de email todos los días y apoyar para que tengamos convocatoria. También un agradecimiento y un apoyo a María Carolina de Unirred, red aliada con quienes estructuramos este proyecto hace 2 años y quienes en este momento pues estuvieron la primera semana con Tasha y nos han acompañado en varios eventos y sé que también están acá acompañándonos. Muchas gracias. Y bueno, a todos los que nos estoy nombrando de las diferentes universidades, a los vicerrectores, a los directores de internacionalización, que durante 2 meses que estuvimos estructurando esas 3 semanas del Tour de la Transferencia Social, Fulbright Rumbo, estuvieron con la camiseta puesta. Y bueno, también decirles que hoy no es el fin, hoy es el evento de cierre, pero mañana tenemos una última actividad que está enfocada en semilleros, que es nuestro segundo taller con semilleros de investigación de las diferentes universidades. Tuvimos ya como un primer workshop que se realizó el segundo día de la visita de Tasha y mañana tenemos el cierre. Y desde Rumbo, pues nosotros como red académica cerramos muy contentos este capítulo de 3 semanas donde hubo aprendizaje, donde hubo muchas experiencias, donde hubo compartir. Hubiésemos querido que fuera más presencial, pero todos entendemos lo que estamos pasando desde hace más de 15 meses y gracias por adaptarnos, gracias a las universidades y a los asociados por las diferentes convocatorias. Tuvimos eventos con más de 100 personas. No es fácil en una dinámica donde después de 15 semanas, de 15 meses, estamos agobiados de tener todo en línea y pues que nos hayan acompañado y hayamos tenido esas convocatorias tan fuertes es muy satisfactorio para nosotros y estamos muy agradecidos con ustedes, nuestros asociados, por estar ahí apoyándonos en este sueño que tenemos todos en conjunto, que es fortalecer la academia y fortalecer todo el trabajo que se hace desde la investigación en las diferentes universidades asociadas. Sin quitar más tiempo, porque creo que a veces son muy necesarios esos saludos más cuando es agradecimiento que listamos a todos. Le devuelvo la palabra a Pablo para que continúe con el paso a quien sigue en el orden. Muchas gracias a todos por estar acá.
Bueno, entonces ahora vamos a darle paso a Juan Andrés Suárez, quien nos está acompañando desde la Comisión Fulbright Colombia. quienes nos han acompañado durante también estas 3 semanas y nos han ayudado a organizar todas estas actividades junto a Tasha. En verdad, pues muchas gracias a Fulbright por apoyarnos en este gran proyecto que hemos tenido. Y bueno, Juan Andrés, te doy la palabra para que nos des un saludo y de verdad muchas gracias por todo el apoyo.
Buenos días para todos. En verdad me uno al agradecimiento de Rumbo, de Juan Mauricio, de Pablo, bueno, de todo el equipo de trabajo. Para nosotros también es un gusto poder estar hoy aquí acompañándoles, poder estar en este foro Fulbright. En verdad que agradezco mucho a Rumbo por la organización del evento, por haber participado del programa Fulbright Youth Specialist para una corte que ya es pues está muy atrás en el tiempo desde 2019 y que la comisión ha hecho todos sus esfuerzos para mantenerla, para que podamos contar todavía con el apoyo de nuestra especialista. De verdad, it's been a pleasure to have you, Dr. Tasha, to have your support, to have your knowledge and education with everything you have done here in Colombia. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you. I'm going to switch to Spanish to all the people that want to know more about the Fulbright Youth Specialist Program for the educational institutions here in Colombia. So thank you to everyone. And para aquellos que no conocen un poco el programa, yo solo quiero decirles que nosotros desde el año pasado pudimos reactivar los programas para estadounidenses, un gran esfuerzo que hemos hecho en conjunto con el Departamento de Estado, pero también con la Embajada de Estados Unidos en Colombia. Y para quienes no conocen este programa, el programa Fulbright US Specialist permite que instituciones colombianas puedan invitar a un profesor o a un experto estadounidense, claro que proporcione un apoyo académico y o profesional, dependiendo de las necesidades de cada institución, por un periodo comprendido entre los 14 a los 42 días, es decir, que más o menos los especialistas en Colombia están entre 2 a 6 semanas. Con este programa, la Comisión Fulbright busca promover nuevas formas de colaboración interinstitucional entre Colombia y Estados Unidos, también fortalecer las capacidades institucionales en entidades públicas y privadas, generar redes de colaboración académica, pero también promover procesos de internacionalización en las instituciones anfitrionas. Y Rumbo, con todas las universidades que hacen parte de este grupo, pues aún más apoyan y aún más podemos tener impacto con nuestros especialistas. Así que de verdad que es un gran honor, pero también apoyar algunas iniciativas y proyectos muy específicos y puntuales de cada institución. Como les decía, la comisión reactivó el año pasado y los programas, pero desde este año ya contamos con varios programas y con varios estadounidenses en Colombia. Desde enero pudimos contar con ya 3 US Scholars, también pudimos contar con una US Teacher y bueno, diferentes programas. Y para el caso de los especialistas, este primer semestre del 2021 hemos contado con cerca y un poco más de 30 proyectos en desarrollo, es decir, 30 instituciones colombianas están teniendo el apoyo de los especialistas en Colombia. Claro, ya muchos han viajado porque como ven, el tiempo es muy corto en lo que están aquí en Colombia, entonces ya estamos casi que en la recta final de los que ya deben regresar nuevamente a Estados Unidos. Esto ha sido posible gracias al apoyo y al esfuerzo de la comisión para mantener una corte tan vieja, pero también gracias al apoyo y las contribuciones directas de un gran socio cofinanciador que es ICETEX, pero también del apoyo y del aporte directo de cada institución anfitriona que reciba el especialista, que en este caso pues es Rumbo, y por quien de verdad nosotros también estamos muy agradecidos por todo el apoyo, por la cordialidad con la especialista en Colombia y por todo lo que han podido desarrollar en este tiempo. En ese orden de ideas, no me queda más que nuevamente agradecerles y esperar que la visita de nuestra especialista Fulbright, la doctora Tasha, haya sido muy productiva, tanto para ella, pero también para ustedes como institución anfitriona. Igualmente, espero que este espacio y este foro genere una discusión muy enriquecedora, muy entretenida para la audiencia que está hoy aquí asistiendo y pues también para nuestra especialista. Así que muchas gracias por la asistencia, muchas gracias por todo el esfuerzo que han hecho y bueno, esperamos ver pronto más instituciones con el beneficio de este programa. Así que disfruten de este espacio. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Juan. Gracias por esas palabras. Gracias por darnos una perspectiva del trabajo que hace Fulbright hoy en día en el país. Vamos entonces a empezar con este foro. Primero les voy a presentar a quien va a ser nuestra moderadora del día de hoy, quien va a estar dirigiendo esta conversación entre nuestros expertos. Nuestra moderadora es Laura Mercedes Moreno. Ella es psicóloga egresada de la Universidad Nacional de Colombia con interés y experiencia en investigación en neurociencias, docente con 8 años de experiencia en contextos universitarios, interesada en la circulación del conocimiento y la generación de conciencia acerca de la importancia de la salud mental y el papel de la psicología en el desarrollo social e individual. Ella nos acompaña desde Finlandia en este momento y bueno, ella representa en este momento a la Universidad de que, como bien lo decía Juan Mauricio, pues ha hecho un gran papel en todo este evento de ayudarnos a organizar este foro. Entonces, bueno, te doy la palabra, Laura. Muchísimas gracias por la ayuda. Y yo creo que ya ahorita vamos a cambiar al idioma inglés. Entonces, les repito la instrucción de que las personas que quieran escuchar la interpretación de este evento lo pueden hacer a través del icono que hay acá en Zoom que dice interpretación. Hay un mapa mundi y seleccionan la opción en español para que ustedes puedan tener acceso a esa traducción simultánea, ¿vale? Muchísimas gracias nuevamente a todos y Laura, tienes ahora la palabra. Muchas gracias.
Well, first done everything. I want to thank everyone to be here. Of course, Dr. Tasha, it's a great pleasure that you are here, like joining us. And now I'm going to proceed with the presentation of our panelists. However, my presentation is going to be in Spanish for the panelists, and then we'll proceed with the questions, and that will like happen in English. But well, first we have Dr. Tasha Hawe. She is professor in chair psychology in the department Humboldt State University in Arcata, California, in the United States. Ella es psicóloga del desarrollo que se especializa en la prevención del abuso sexual infantil y psicopatología. Es entrenadora principal del programa para padres en prevención del abuso infantil. Del abuso infantil de la Asociación Americana de Psicología, ACT, Raising Safe Kids. Su último proyecto es la segunda edición de su libro del texto Marriages and Families in the 21st Century, a Bioecological Approach, de publicaciones Sage. Tenemos también a Joana Marcela Durán Molina. Ella es docente, líder del semillero de neurociencias y neuropsicología de la Universidad del área andina. Ella es psicóloga egresada de la Universidad de los Andes, especialista en psicología clínica de la Universidad Católica de Colombia, magíster en neurociencias de la Universidad Federal de Río Grande do Sul, es de Brasil, es magíster en psicología y doctora en psicología de la Universidad de los Andes. Es investigadora, docente universitaria, líder de semillero y par evaluador. Y también tenemos a Santiago Gualteros González, es profesor asistente de la Facultad de Psicología de la Universidad Antonio Nariño, es psicólogo egresado de la Universidad Santo Tomás, magíster en psicología clínica de la Universidad Nacional de Colombia, psicoterapeuta, consultor en salud mental infanto-juvenil con énfasis en trastornos del estado de ánimo y de la ansiedad. Es docente de psicología clínica y evolutiva de la Facultad de Psicología de la Universidad Antonio Nariño y tiene una trayectoria teórica e investigativa de las posturas del psicoanálisis clásicas y contemporáneas. We have a really high quality professionals today, so it's going to be a really interesting panel, I hope. And this is like the main subject of this forum is like, what is the importance of mental health and emotion management in the process of social transference? So I would say that that's our first question. Like, what do you think, all of you? What is important of mental health in these processes? Because we might think that it's just, you know, going to the communities and try to do our best, but how emotion can management comes into the game, how comes into play. Sorry, I cannot hear anyone, but well, I would say that then we can start listening maybe Dr. Tasha, then Santiago can come, and then Joanna. Thank you. In case like maybe it wasn't like understood, like it would be like important to address what is the importance of mental health and emotion management in these processes of social transference.
Am I supposed to respond, or are you calling on people?
No, I want you to, well, the three of you to reply to this question.
Unfortunately, I'm still not sure what you guys mean by social transfer after a month of hearing this. I'm not really sure what that means.
Okay, like we can say that social transference, at least as we understand, is the process that you do with working with communities and trying that the knowledge that we generate in our work like goes in the community and like returns somehow into the academia, but it's like a bidirectional process in which we transform the society we are working with.
Okay. I would like to move away from that idea and move towards a collaboration, a knowledge co-construction and a knowledge collaboration, because I don't think we know everything that's gonna do something to them. But anyway, to your point, I endorse a trauma-informed perspective for every system and every agency. So if we're informed about the trauma that has affected us and our institutions and the communities that we're working with, then we're always going to have barriers to our success, because that trauma embeds itself in our biological systems and in our brain development. And so without the ability to recognize how we're functioning in a mindful way, then we're never going to be able to break down barriers and be as collaborative and as supportive as we would like to be, either with our colleagues or our family or the people we're working with in the communities.
That's really like interesting point that you make. And actually, right now I was thinking like, how like do you think the use of the language actually that you started to say like, yeah, we don't know everything, so it's more like a co-construction. So then like, what do you think about the use of the language and the possible effects that it has on the communities, like how this like how language can be even an oppressive way to get into there, and then like start to building barriers instead of trying to make bridges between community and researchers?
Is that me or other people?
For you right now.
Call on people, I'm confused.
I'm so sorry.
Is this for the other speakers or are you following up with me?
It's a follow-up question with you.
Okay. So I really think we all need to concentrate very carefully on decolonizing our language, because all of us using Latin languages have a colonization mindset. So any way you can, think about the way that the communities say things and believe and the things that they perceive about us. So we need to ask them, what do you think of us? What are we doing? You know, we need to be open and not be afraid to hear the answers and to be able to change. And so we've worked very hard to decolonize our curriculum, our syllabi, the language in our values statements on our website, you know, to acknowledge the history of colonialism and white supremacy. So I think we all just need to take a look at what we use in terms of the words and how they're not perceived the same by everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, in that case, I would like to go with Joanna and Santiago. And how do you think that this decolonization can be addressed in your respective practices? As, for example, Joanna works in neuroscience. How can your work be in like this process of like social transference and being respectful with the communities and with the people you work with? In the same case to Santiago, first I would like to hear your opinion, and then like we can move to Santiago.
Perfect. So I think that is really important to understand that every knowledge it's important, you know. For example, it's important that everyone knows that emotions are important for students learning. And in my case, in neuroscience, we know everything about emotions in the brain and how emotions can affect, for example, memory or attention. So it's really important to know that the quality of teaching and to learning depends of the emotional state of the teacher or the student. So there is a need for adequate knowledge, practice, and mental health understanding. And this requires new forms of teaching and to understand the context of the person and the neurobiology and everything. For example, in my case with my students, I try to build in possibilities for mental health care. So, for example, trying to improve interpersonal relationships, trying to read about the, I don't know, the topic of the subject, and on trying to read with a critical reading, you know. And for example, some research has shown some effects of teachers' emotions on students' emotions, and learning behavior and relationship between teacher emotions and their perception of teaching, and academic and research performance. So this is really important because if my emotions can affect the emotion of my students, and my research performance is something that I have to know, you know. And because of that, we need to not just understand what are emotions and how the emotions are represented in my brain, but also how emotions can affect my transfer of knowledge and the learning of my students or the communities, or well, any public, you know.
All right. Thank you, Joanna. Then Santiago, what do you think? Like, what would you add to Joanna's intervention, please?
Following the honesty of the first statement, I have to say something. Learning teaching processes are emotional, purely emotional. As attachment theory teaches the bound between a professor and his or her students will be the basis of every interaction that is presented about the future. Saying that, presenting the estimate of decolonized language is a way we have to start seeing in a full view perspective. We have to start to interpret our reality in context. So I suggest we start speaking about the concept of intersection. The intersection we have, we actually, the teachers, professors, the universities, and the academics, the scientific community have to start to believe, really, that's the word I want to say that, because it's really, I believe it is almost religious, in the so full variables that we have to take into account to interview in newest contexts in communities. So as in Latin America, and I can say almost sure in all the so-but called third world countries, that we have so much complex of social bond and the social tissue that I don't know, restraint, maybe, the access to knowledge. And the social transfers of knowledge will be, in the future, I hope, the main goal of for us to try to connect all the work we do in the academy and put it out in the reality. That doesn't happen here in Colombia, that doesn't happen here in America Latina, Latin America, sorry. So I believe the emotions, the role in the daily life, are central core, not only because they are important for our behavior, are important for our cognition, but because the human experience is an emotional experience. We have evolved through years to being an emotional beings, to bound each other through emotions. And emotion have to be the basis of teaching and learning processes, and also for the social transmission of knowledge. I want to believe that we are working on that at this moment, maybe more or less from our corners of the movement, but I believe in, and I'm a coach with Joanna, this have to be accompanied with a critical view of the reality.
Thank you. I find really interesting that, of course, one of the keys of this reunion, or one of the keys in the 3 points of view, is that we have to take into account the context, and that, of course, the context affects just not the emotion, but also the way that we relate to each other in the process. So I think that is really important. And also in that sense, then I think that, and at least it's a feeling that I have, is that when I was back in the university teaching, I was feeling that the university was separate from the outside, from the reality. And it was this position of the university has to fight with the reality to change it. How do you think, the 3 of you, I would like to reply this answer. How do you think that we can stop decolonizing the reality? Because basically, believing that is the university changing the world, how can we change the world from the using the university as a way to exchange with the community, instead of just believing that as we are in the university, we have somehow the power of changing a reality that we are even not aware in the full depths of it. Because as Joanna was addressing, the emotions of the students are an interplay, but also if the student has to go 2 hours in the bus, and as Santiago was also addressing, how the Latin American reality in the university and in general is as I said, creating some blockades, let's say. So how do you think, in this case, I would go first with Santiago, and then with Joanna, and then Dr. Tasha, if you want to add something to that, I would love to hear. Thank you.
I really want to believe that in the university we are working on this, because in the process of the professional practice at the end of the undergrad, we are addressing for our students to get in touch with the community in different ways. I work in the clinical field, and I work with undergraduate psychologists, and the experience that I got is they have an estimate of that's really common with them, is that this is not what books tell us. This is not what we see in class. So as you tell us, we have a bridge between the universities, the scientific community, I can't speak by Latin American community of science, and the reality. There's so many realities that we got, because we in the universities, and this is gonna sound ugly, but it's true. We are a white man talking to another white man. We cannot colonize that speech of knowledge and transfer to another community. If we don't know how the other community comprehends the reality, what are the problems, what are the issues, what are the goals, the myths, what are the beliefs, we don't know. Because we are so focused on study, theory, and practice, and classical practice, and we are just overwhelmed by so many theories that we cannot connect the theories with the practice. So cooperation will be the key. So following Dr. Howe's ideas, cooperation between the community and the researchers. Cooperation not only by the different methods, different scientific approaches to the reality, but get involved and immerse in all the community's process. Maybe we can rescue the ethnographical methods at the first. Maybe we can see through empathy, there is the really key of the psychologist practices in every field, I believe. Through empathy, we can afford and pass over this bridge that I identify here.
Yeah, well, I think that we have to put the theory into practice. You know, like read and understand how we can put the things that we read into practice, because in the university scenario, the teacher has the role of guiding the student, guiding like in the search and selection of information, but stimulating their thinking, the way of they can solve problem situations, how the student can analyze and read in a critical view. So in that way, maybe in the university, or during our process of learning, we can understand that it's important to read the context, you know, and it's important to recognize the need for a collaborative approach to implementing change in the way we teach and the way we learn. To always think and try to make that the students understand that the experiences of life contribute to the understanding of the context. Like Santiago said, it's important to know that not everything is like theory, read books and everything, but try to put that in a practice way, and in every moment trying to understand the people, you know, the context, the country, the situation, the emotional state of the person. So yeah.
Thank you.
I think in addition to what my colleague said, it starts with providing inclusive education where we open the doors to people who ordinarily wouldn't be there, which means we have to have flexible admissions policies. We have to have financial assistance. We have to invite everybody to be part of the cognitive elite that we are. And once you start to change the demographic of the professorate, you have people from all of those communities in the ivory tower, and they help us to change. And so, for example, in my area, our local Native American tribe has their first PhD, and we hired her as a professor at our university. So we have a representative in both worlds. So helping people to develop a bicultural identity of learning. I teach my students that theories in academic writing are a foreign language. It's not another language that you have to replace your old language with. It's a foreign language that you have to learn how to write this way and speak this way and think this way, but not to the exclusion of what you grew up with and what your native beliefs and practices are. So helping us develop bicultural identities and increasing the diversity of the people who are here at the top is really going to help us build those bridges. I know that for myself, I grew up in poverty in the inner city, often with no food, homeless, and that informs my entire life. You see me now as this accomplished PhD Fulbright scholar, but in my brain, I'm still that little girl in the streets. And so that informs everything I do and the motivation behind the what I think is important work I do with communities.
That's very true. I think remembering like that you are part of a social tissue is really important in the sense that it keeps you aware where are you standing. However, this is a personal feeling. Sometimes university is trying to put you aside of this reality and tries you to be seated in the classroom, forget your problems, forget that you have like something to worry about, forget about your work. If you didn't sleep just because you were working, this is not your task over here. And I feel right now that that might be a shortcoming because we are disregarding reality and emotions of the other people, particularly in these senses. But also Dr. Tasha was addressing something that it was really interesting and is, oh, Santiago, do you want to say something? Sorry.
Don't worry, finish your idea, and after that I reply, okay?
All right, thank you. Yes. Then what I was what I was saying is that in that sense, I think we also need to transform our educational practices because I feel, and that's something that I noticed back in the time, is that we are teaching people to be good workers, people to be obedient. You have to sit in here, you have to reply what I'm asking you, you have to read what I tell you. What about reading over stuff and bringing me a different point of view? And I feel, I don't know if it's the case in all universities, but at least that was an experience that I can recall from the time I was in university, even when I was a student, but also when I was a teacher. And trying to fight this is even difficult because you are so used to that then you need to have a step aside and think, okay, what are you doing? How were you when you were that age? Because it's also a matter of this generational difference that it can be, even when you are a young teacher, you forget all the things that you have to pass through. And then you are like over there, like, yeah, I am here. So now I'm going to tell you what is the reality. And as Santiago was addressing too, there are like multiple realities and multiple ways to go and to cope. For example, in our country, that is like a whole matter of coping every day since the moment you cross the door to go to the university. So I think that that is a really important reflection that you did, the three of you actually, and I love the way that everything is like just connected. And I like to see that we are maybe in the front at portals of a big change in like in the world, or at least in the practices that we do in our different scenarios. Santiago?
Thank you. I just want to add a couple of ideas from I was thinking about hearing my colleagues. First, we have to start this decolonization, I believe, in the theories, actually. We always, this is the case in Colombia, but I believe this is the case in most parts of the Latin American universities, that we are teaching just the classical theory, just the contemporary theory about some white people in Europe, some white people in North America, and we hasn't hear our own voices here. So start to address and teaching new epistemological perspective in science will be one of the many steps we have to take. Yes, so not over get the representation and the equity and the diversity, people here, that it's so important that we here in Colombia live in so-called constitution, a pluriethnical, diversity, pluriethnical, multicultural country, and that we see in our students. But in the reality, what we're teaching is white speak. It's from some white men back in Europe, and we teach that. And it's so important to hear and read the classics, but we cannot stop there. We have to hear and read everything that we are producing here in Latin America. That's the case of the postures of the self-epistemological postures of Boaventura de Sousa Santos, or teaching us a new form of pedagogy of teaching, like Paulo Freire in Brazil. So we have to organize more our curriculum, also our teachings as professors. We have to believe, and that's the it's a maybe I'm here as a preacher, not as a scientist, and we have to believe that we have all the potential to change our reality over and start with our speech in the universities. And same with that, I believe that to connect the universities with the practice and to start with this complex process of social transmission of knowledge, we have to start to touch ourselves in an emotional way and say, here am I. I came from a farmer family, I came from a poor family, I came from a black family, I have native Colombian people here as ancestors, and I believe that my students will recognize my origins as theirs, and we can start that diversity from our point of view. Not only to teaching, okay, talk with between you, talking within you, start knowing each other. No. Because professor has to be there. As I start this conversation, learning teaching processes are an emotional processes because we are emotional beings.
That's true. Thank you
Can
so
I
much.
just add one quick thing to what he just said, because it's an assignment that I love that my colleague does. He has all of our faculty official biographies, like from our websites, and then he has faculty write their real biography, and he gives them to students, and they compare what our public faces to what we've really gone through, and students love this. They cannot believe how much we have in common with them because we're always up here, but it's a great assignment if you ever are interested in using.
That's really interesting, and actually it's like a way to humanize the professor or the researcher, and I think that's a good start, as you said also, Santiago, because I think that's the whole point. You're a human, and you are also bringing your reality and your experiences to the classroom or wherever you go. And in that same sense, I have this question regarding, for example, how to avoid that the knowledge that we create just becomes like a specific type of knowledge that just a few people can access. Let's say that, for example, in our country, we have strong emphasis in publication. And actually, the publish or perish. So it means that you have to publish a lot. And it's great that then you have like raises in your salary or whatever it is. You have a better CV if you publish a lot. But then how can we interest the community that doesn't read English, that doesn't read academic contents, to read material that actually has somehow a possibility of like talk to them in any way? So I would like to ask you, the three of you, what do you think? If someone feels that has already an answer, I would like to give the word to that person, because I wouldn't like to push anyone to reply first. However, if we need an order, I would start with Joanna, then with Santiago, and then with Natasha.
Okay, I don't know it is the better answer, but I think that it's important for us, it's important to understand that we are educating or teaching people, not like the student, like a person that go to the classroom and doesn't have a family or a context, because it's not just about teaching a subject, neuroscience, clinical psychology, or something like that, but trying to make students better persons, like trying to understand that we have the power. I don't know it is the best word, but we have the power to make some important social change, because if we avoid that thinking about that the student is just a student, and we don't have to like know the life of the student or the social context, because it's just a student, and we just have to teaching a subject and no more. So if we understand that and try to teach how to become a better person, and we can maybe generate a change not only in our classroom or in our profession, but in our country, maybe in the world, because we must try to make the student to understand that they are people, they are not psychologists or any other profession that right now I don't remember, but I think that this is the key. And also the science communication for the dummies, trying to talk who are not experts, like the father of our student or the mom or anyone, the communication of the science communication is important, is really, really important. And I think that maybe we can change something in the world with the thing that I already said.
Following with Joanna, I believe that here now we are living in a diverse pluricultural world, and that's the reality in our classrooms. I believe there are three things I have to relate the three things. First of this is popular education. We have to put it out the knowledge of the universities and go to the reality and teach them in other ways, maybe with healthcare programs in the public schools, at the public universities, maybe in the streets, here with all over the social agitation that passed our country in the last months, in the last 2 months. We have another tools to teach. Maybe go to the street class, you put it out, all the tools you have to teach, and take your class on the street. Speak with them, speak with the people who transit the street or in front of the university. But also we have to contextualize and recontextualize examples of the theory and practice. As I say to my practitioners in therapy, you have to know your patient. You have to know where she or he came. And also, as my professors and my colleagues say, you have to know your students. But more than that, you have to know the pluricultural context they came. You have to know all the ways they can interpret the theory that you are trying to teach them, the practice that you are trying to teach them. I believe through examples, but also to conversation. Joanna's point of view make me think about taking account of the knowledge that they already have about their culture, but also about the psychology, but also about the reality, about the life, the political issues. And it is not, as Joanna says, and I believe Laura and Tasha share this point of view, it is not an expert talking to a bunch of people who doesn't know anything. No, it's an intercourse and social exchange and a boundary, an attachment of people who know different things and try to construct different things. Dr. Howe used yesterday a beautiful metaphor about the stairs and the opportunities that the people are raised for and the opportunities the people lack. And I believe that's the perfect metaphor this time, because we're trying to up the same stair at the same time with different opportunities. We have to build these opportunities through social transmission of knowledge and center the conversation about mental health. I believe that it's starting to believe that mental health is not a privilege. Mental health is not an abstract concept that manage psychologists and psychiatric and pediatric and medicians. No, it's a way to see the life. And we have, in this current of thinking, to reattach again mental health to general health, because in science, sadly, and most here in Latin America and in psychology science, we are split it out, the mental health and the health in general, the physical health. And it is not a different thing. It is part of, it is the same, and we have to address that. And I believe that through knowledge, to companion, and to take into account the other point of view, the people who are sharing with us our daily life. We go to university daily in life and teach classes and research and drink coffee with our colleagues and get sick and get in love and live there. We have to share our experiences to know that as this experience made us a diverse universe.
I agree with everything they just said. And going back to your original question, when I was a graduate student, I read this statistic that every peer-reviewed article has an average of 3 readers. And we put years of work into all of that. So I asked my supervisor, who was a very famous psychologist and published a million things, why are we wasting our time doing this for 3 people? Don't we really want to affect the world? And he said, I publish it. If the world is interested, they can read it. And I, as a young person, was like, no, that's not okay. And so I'll give you some examples of some of the things I do to make sure that the community knows about what we do. One is that anyone who participates in my studies gets a summary of the results, just a 1-page, very simple wording. this is what happened to your group of people, obviously not individuals, but as a group. Second, I give executive summaries like pamphlets to community agencies that helped me or participated to summarize the results in everyday language. Third, I give community presentations to various school districts and community agencies like Santiago was suggesting. Fourth, I'm part of a group which you might consider doing in Colombia if you don't have already, called the Research to Policy Collaboration. And this is a group of hundreds of researchers who work together with policymakers and Congress people, and we deliver our research in one-page fact sheets on special topics. So when a politician is interested in something like domestic violence and how to best address it, then the team of researchers makes a fact sheet of one page and meets with the congressperson's staff person to say, this is what we know. It's nonpartisan, non-political. It's just disseminating research. And then fourth or fifth, in this age of social media, communicating to the media is very important, whether it's a newspaper article or a Facebook page. If you're researching depression, put your research on depression on there in everyday language, not just attach your article. So there's many ways that we can not be living in the ivory tower and communicate with people, especially if our research is applicable to the everyday person. And they are very interested in it, especially neuroscience. Oh my God. We went and taught neuroscience to teenagers who were in jail. They loved it. They wanted to know about trauma, their brains, why they're committing these crimes. They were fascinated that trauma could be affecting their behavior. And so everybody wants to know about psychology.
That's awesome. And I think that those examples were something that some of us maybe have thought, but we never have maybe the courage to make it. But I think that those exercises were really interesting, because usually what we do is if you want to have when we have like participants, we said like, yeah, if you want to get to know what happened with your data, you just contact me. But I think that's a way to put just a barrier. I think it's really important what you address, and it's like to try to communicate that, particularly in the context of mental health. And as also Santiago was saying, of course, we are not in a separation between mind and body, let's say, in this dualistic language. But we are like actually needing that people understand more and more that their health is global, and that they cannot just go without breakfast and hope to have a productive day, because that's going to affect everything, the emotions, for example. And something that you address that is so key for me, and that I think is really, really important, is also the relation between research and policymakers, particularly in mental health. I think recently I was thinking, for example, how individual contracts can affect mental health of people. For example, the call center agents, and how hard they have to work for hours dealing with emotional stress, seated in a box, literally, and just trying to keep all the time his good mood, and then suddenly just leave their work. But for example, in the context of a pandemic, the work doesn't leave because it's the same house. How we psychologists address these matters, and how can we, for example, help to improve the policies in working areas. And I think that's a really fascinating change. I think this awareness is helping to go towards that area. I hope. As Joanna also was saying, yeah, we really need to make small changes to impact like bigger communities. And as she said also, I really like that sentence, that maybe even the world. And I think psychologists are really important. We are really important in this process, not just from the academia, but also, as I said, also speaking to the communities. And then in that sense, you mentioned, it was like your last part of the intervention when you said, for example, that it's necessary also to use mass media to communicate our research, to like get people to know what we do in the academia maybe. But then this is a follow-up question: how to establish this healthy link between the media, the community, and the scientific community? Because it seems, at least that's something we are like usually seeing quite often, at least in our media, that when we say something like in rats, it seems that eating carrots, I'm just bringing anything, eating carrots can improve the quality of sleep. And then in the news appears like, eating carrots is going to make that you sleep like a baby. I didn't say that. So from your experience, how do you think that can happen? Particularly Tasha, then if Santiago and Joanna want to address something, I would be happy to hear you.
Well, I talk to the media a lot because I'm on the American Psychological Association media list. So journalists contact me all the time, and I have a few rules. One, I'm not going to give you a sound bite that you have a deadline in an hour. That's not happening. Two, I need to read what you wrote before you publish it. So a lot of times they are not willing to do that. So then I don't agree to do it. But they do want sound bites. So it's your responsibility to speak in sound bites. You need to present your 1-minute elevator speech about what your research says and what it doesn't say. So a lot of times academics are giving these long, involved, nuanced explanations because that's how science works. That's not how journalism works. So if you want them to understand, you have to speak their language. And so you give the 1 to 2 minute soundbite, you make your results as sexy as possible while also saying this is not a cause and effect relationship. But you're always going to be exploited. I did some fun research on heavy metal bands and groupies and fans, just for fun. And so this research went viral around the world. I was contacted by hundreds of different countries, print, Facebook, all different radio stations. And so basically most of them got it right, which I was so grateful for. But there were a few that was like, heavy metal makes you the happiest person in the world. Heavy metal cures depression, you know, all of these things. And so at some point you just have to let it go, but you can take small steps to make sure it's done accurately.
Would you like to add something, Joanna or Santiago?
I would like to contextualize my reply, because hearing Dr. Howe, it's like hearing an utopia here in Colombia, hearing her answer. It's like hearing a paradise for us to be here as a scientific community. Why? Because here in Colombia, the Science and Technology Minister is the last on the national budget, and the first to be withdrawing their resources when something came up. We, from many years ago, start to disbelieve the television news and start to consume in massive ways social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp. And that's our media to transmit our knowledge. We start to be as a digital native, people, we start to believe that those are the channels we have to address to speak with the community. We have not the opportunity to get involved with the politicians because they have another agenda, another goals for them. And we have to start to make our own paths, making our own communities between our contacts, making our knowledge between our practitioners, our students, or everything. So I believe that this is an utopia for us here in Colombia.
Well, not all researchers have the ability to communicate, their results, but every day there are more researchers who do it and do science journalism, for example, to bring the paper into the language of everyday life. So those of us who may not have the ability to communicate our results, our laboratory results can rely on those who can, and every day there are more and new ways of communicate our knowledge, our papers, results. And for example, I know mathematicians who have YouTube channels to talk about mathematics with the community in a different way. Or neuroscience who create blogs on super complex topics, trying to make all us to understand and trying to, for example, put in easy words the complex methods of the papers, the use of rats or tools in the research, and in the language of everyday, so everyone can understand the results and can communicate this important information to their students or their parents or their husband, wife, etc. So I think that is know that if you don't have the ability to communicate, there are many other people that can, and you can write or call that person and communicate your results,
Definitely. These are three interesting ways to see it. I really like the possibility of just reviewing before the notices, like the news are going to be published. Then you can have the opportunity to say like, this is not what I said, and then like correct the information. But also, as Santiago was saying, maybe a way to impact also greatest amount of people is using this social media. Actually, most of, or at least I've noticed that there's this new trend of publishing information in Twitter threads, which is amazing because you are like in your social media just swiping around, and then like you find something that is interesting, and then you can get interesting information in really short time, and actually in a more like, let's say, readable way, if you are not in the mood of reading a whole study and review the methods and the whatever they did. So I think that's also really interesting, and also you can even get closer to your students by doing that. And as Joanna was saying, I really like that idea also. That was really smart. Like, if I don't know how to communicate, I can look for someone who wants to communicate what I am doing. And I think that's really important also, because in this process of building a network, I think that's also important. You are not alone in your brain, and you are not alone in your classroom. You have colleagues, you have communicators, you have lots of people that maybe can add up to that process of communication. And I feel that is really, really important. Just before I'm going to give you the word, Santiago, I need to just say this because it's something that I remember back in the time, and it was at the beginning when I was in the university. They were saying like, yeah, you have to think that you are speaking to your auntie, so you have to make that the idea is as simple as that you are speaking to your auntie. But then one day a teacher said like, yeah, but your auntie doesn't read this, so you don't have to make it. And then I thought like, well, that's really sad to see it, because actually I would love that if my auntie reads what I do, she understands what I do. Why not? Why like we use this exclusion of people based on what they don't read because they don't have the education or whatever it is, taking into account that, for example, in our country, we have a lot of population that is like not even educated in the formal, like in the full years of school. What is the point of excluding them even more? That is like something that made me think how strong is sometimes the inequality in the classroom when we think about, yeah, we are, as also Tasha said, in the ivory tower. So then it's like, yeah, we are the enlightened, and then we are like actually closing the access to others. That's not the way to be, at least not in my opinion. Santiago, you wanted to say something?
You just summarized wonderfully what I was just about to say. So, but I want to add a little thing in on benefit of communicate in an easy and didactic way our researches, our knowledge, and to get involved people in the mental health programs, every field that you like. We have to fight with an ancient enemy of the science, that is the fake news. When you post something on Facebook and you post something on Twitter, and you put your resources, you put, I don't know, your reference list or whatever, you have your background, you know. But someone else without this background post a different infography, a different image, a different post, and because he has more or she has more followers, she has more people, more community, more growth in the social media, they believe it more. So we have to start to think about the careful we have to do and the responsibility we have to take in count to put in those channels our researches, to put in those channels our information. Facebook and Google are starting to process every information that you put on internet. So they have to decide if whatever you're saying had evidence. And that's, I can remember well, but yesterday, Dr. Howe was highlighting us the difference between evidence and an opinion, the difference and the necessity of have evidence in our practices, and the base evidence practice, and the practice is based on evidence. And we have to take in account of that when we want to communicate with the community and to educate ourselves about mental health through emotion, through knowledge, to contextualize, to decolonize, to economic fields, everything that. But we have to fight this too. So it seems like we're fighting a fight we never gonna win, but in some of that without tools, without weapons. It's the case here in Colombia, maybe. In other countries are different.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenge of the science in countries that are like trying to achieve this development. And in that sense, I think we can start as like maybe that would be like the key of everything is educating the community in the type of material they get. And I think the most we provide them with quality material, maybe you can we can just like also uh, get them used or to what are the characteristics of a good material maybe. um, um, but yeah, actually like the question of what is a good material could arise, but I would say that at least we try to provide them with information that they can understand, that is not so fantastic that actually sounds fantastic. And then we don't need to think much about it. It's just like give them the shortcut. The idea would be like that they don't need the shortcut to understand what we are saying. So I think our first task, and this is my personal opinion, I'm sorry, like I'm also here like saying what I think, but yeah. I think getting closer to the community would be one starting point. Get to know what is the language they use, what are the like the type of contents they consume, and about that. Like also, we Joanna also um, participate in these activities like the Brain Awareness Week. That is not just an event that we do in Colombia. It's an event that is worldwide and is trying to get neuroscience knowledge to everyone in a way that allows them to take home something, and is not just this highly specialized material for people as us. Is all the contrary. The idea is like to try to get the knowledge to the people that needs it, because as Tasha was saying, when we publish lots and lots and lots of articles, maybe nobody needs it. 3 people are going to need it, and then it's gone. What is the point of making it? As you said, like putting lots of effort on that. But what about the people who's struggling with mental health issues? What about people who's actually trying to get to know how to raise more healthy children, or how to build better relationships? I think that people is the one that need us, and the people that we usually get behind because we are so busy writing really serious articles. And I think that is one of our main problems when we are like mental health professionals, because we are usually, I don't know, fighting with these fake strategies to solve problems. Like, yeah, just a smile and everything is going to be good. No, we fight with that. But however, they speak the language of the people. We don't do that. So why do we expect something different? So I think also that would be something that we can think about. But also in that sense, I wanted to ask, in your experience, particularly Tasha, is just about these policymakers and the idea of research to policy. Does it have an effect on your mental health or in your emotional response, like trying to do this type of operations, let's say? Is it somehow affecting you as researcher?
Well, the Research to Policy Network trains all of us on nonpartisan wording and language. And so we went through several weeks of training and did rough drafts of things so that it would be completely nonpartisan. And this was during the Trump administration. And so obviously we want the Republican right wing to know about domestic violence. And a lot of them actually do care. I mean, what I learned is that a lot of people that you think are so out there, they actually do care about specific issues. And they actually do want to know the facts, but they want to know what can be done quickly and without a lot of money and time. So you have to provide them with quick solutions that can show that they've put some effort into this issue for their constituents. So it is a different type of communication, but emotionally for me, it was actually very rewarding and exciting to see that all these Congress people that you think are crazy, they actually are working behind the scenes on issues that are important to their constituents. And their staffers want to meet with all of the researchers, especially if you never bring up anything political and it's just about how to help their communities using this research. I emotionally thought it was amazing.
I would like to formulate a follow-up question in that sense. Is it I personally don't know, but like, is it possible to get away from your emotions or your personal involvement in some some type of task you were doing to try to get into other people's sphere, let's say?
Well, now you're getting into my other life as a yoga teacher. So I'm a yoga teacher and I've been practicing yoga for over 20 years. And that is the best way to realize that you don't have to get attached to what you think. You don't have to believe everything you think. You just let it. Thoughts and feelings are transient. You don't have to attach to them. So any kind of mindfulness practice is going to be a great way to realize that your emotions don't have to become reality. You can acknowledge them and try to figure out why they're there, but they don't have to control your life. We also have a giant frontal cortex that allows us to analyze our feelings. So, I mean, I'm all about feeling what you feel, but it's also that another person's perspective and feelings are just as valid as yours. So we often are talking and waiting for them to stop talking so that we can talk more instead of actually listening. And so underlying what people are saying is sometimes something more vulnerable than what they're actually saying. And it's those feelings they're having, which are usually feelings of threat or feelings of fear. And so not attaching so much to people's behavior and what they're saying, but trying to understand what is the human part of why they're doing that. I think a lot of mindfulness practices help you get more to that place of acceptance of even people you think are insane.
Thank you. Then that allows me to ask Santiago and Joanna about, like, how do you deal with the emotional load of being teachers? And like, I have to say this, at least when I was a teacher, I was feeling that sometimes the load of work was overwhelming. And it was not just that, because we have a life, but like, we have a life like besides our academic life that we love, of course, but also we have another life that we try to like put together with everything, and like the reality of a context as ours, in which we teach, maybe listening to the problems outside and feeling the stress of the bus overloaded and the sound outside. And how do you manage to keep it together? Joanna?
Okay, well, we can understand our students' emotions, of course, and we need to try to understand their emotional states. But like Tasha said, we cannot attach to those emotions. So I think that we can allow ourselves to understand them, understand our students' emotions, but not carry with those emotions, you know. And for example, not only as teachers, but also as researchers, we generally judge ourselves and compare ourselves with researchers from other countries who have resources and tools that we don't have. And this makes us not value our research and generates anxiety and frustrations. And because of that, I think that first we need to validate our emotions and love our researchers, because in, for example, our country, we have to do what we can do with our tools, with our researchers, with our few sponsors. So I think that we need to accept our emotions and don't judge ourselves and compare ourselves with anyone. Or well, we can compare ourselves, but trying to make better researchers or trying to make better teachers, but not in a bad way, you know. So I think that this is a way to trying to deal with the different emotions that we experience during our day, our life, our researchers, and well.
Thank you, Joanna. Santiago?
I would like to quote my favorite quote of Melanie Klein's thinking. It's memories lives in feelings. We are emotional beings. Well, I repeat it over and over in my exposition today. And I really believe that I'm not sure if we can detach of our emotions. I agree with Dr. Howe, we can acknowledge them. We can try to figure out what they are here, they're objective. For us, for researchers, trying to commit with our field to believe that our personal issues are taken account because we research, investigate, we dedicate ourselves to teaching because something about us is here. All of us choose this profession because we have a commitment with us, with our families, with the community, with our students. And it's frustrating, eh? It's frustrating. And I believe that this is the feeling that I got when I got involved with the policy about science, the policy about the development of technology, the policy about mental health, public mental health in Colombia. And it's frustration because we doesn't have support of any kind from any other of the shores here. Not from the government, not for the district, not for even the universities itself, because they doesn't have any resources for your research, because we have to build a new laboratory for the engineering faculty. So it is frustrating, but also acknowledge that we are humans, that we are emotional beings, and our memories lives in feelings. We are built our stories about these feelings. So acknowledge them is not enough for me. Taking account of them is not enough for me. I have to get involved with them because emotions give sense to life. As a psychoanalytic perspective, clinical therapy that I may do in also almost 10 years, I really believe that humans have to know more better about mental health to improve our forces, to get involved in the financial issues, the political issues, about that part of our life that is so important and so buried over and over and other things. So in that way, this frustration can become another thing, can become a motivation, can become a threat, can become a cop strategy to fight. I don't like that word. More than that, to build a better here and now, not a better future. I want to believe that I can dream awake here. I want to believe that in this country, in this part of the world, we can dream to better conditions to our work and to better conditions to the people who live in it. So I believe this frustration and these memories and feelings are the base of development. Have strong mental health public laws to protect, prevent, and promote this part of us that is forget.
These are really interesting points of view. Like the three of you had like different approaches to your mental health, and that's really interesting because also all of us are different in our ways to go. I believe that definitely the important thing about it is that everyone is addressing about the awareness of the emotion itself, how I'm feeling and how does it make me feel. But there is a difference between the approach, like I want to fight this, or I want to just recognize that it exists and then like let it go because I cannot attach to this. Of course, like both ways may have the same result. Somehow when I understand what is going on, like in a deep way, I'm sorry, it might be like releasing, and then that relief allows me to deal better in the future with the same feeling. But also, of course, the perspective of why I'm affected by this and why I should, why I just don't let it go. So I think those two approaches are really interesting. And of course, as psychologists, at least, people expect a lot of us usually. Like, you shouldn't get mad, right? Because you're a psychologist, you know better. And it's really important to also understand that, for example, as professionals in health, usually, at least in our country, we don't have necessarily the tools to have the better mental health that we can have in the classroom, because we have 40 students, and then the next classroom is like 40 more and things like that. But I think that personally we can like develop those skills that allow us like to keep it together. But we need to work also together to get to the point that every professional in health, not just ours professors, but also people who is outside in the field, like for example with clinical research that is so important and also so demanding in the mental load, should receive better policies. So I was like really interested in the matter of policymakers and research to policy. The time had passed so fast, and I really enjoyed this moment, but I think it's time to allow our public to ask questions, because it's the end is near, and I'm not referring to the world, but to our event. So I would like to hear if our public has any questions.
There are 2 questions in the Q&A.
Sorry.
I will try to translate the first question. That is, in some places, in some countries in Latin America, the starting combination of a professional career seems like a possibility of an increase of the economic income. You, as you can see, how can you see we can better or get worse the practicals of professional in front of the communities? Add to that, it was consideration. This is a consideration, a form of colonization. Ask Andrea Castellanos. I don't know how to interpret this silence.
It's because they are translating to Tasha.
Okay, but I read the question in English.
Yeah.
Oh, true. I'm so sorry.
If I'm supposed to answer it, I don't even know what it means. So I'll pass it over to other people.
Okay, don't worry. Joanna, you want to say something?
No, I'm trying to understand the question. No, because of your English, but because I really don't understand how finish a career can, I don't know.
I believe that the question addressed to us to think about that in Latin America, getting a professional degree, it's seen like an improve of your lifestyle, like an improve of your income. And from that point of view, we can see it's a place to take in a better conditions from people, from the professional informed, but also from the community he or she is attached to. I believe that in some places, it's a benefit to the community here. We have to believe that our people in the community getting a professional degree, informing technical and technological advance in science is a good thing to think. But from some other places, I believe, and I'm talking about the countryside in Colombia, it is not, because we doesn't have all the opportunities to get work, all the opportunities to get employed at the first time, all the opportunities to do research because of the lack of resources, all the opportunities we have to follow our dreams. I don't know. I really love what I'm studying. I really love to be a therapist because that was my dream when I started to be an undergraduate student. That's me. When I first go to the National University here in Colombia, I found that the majority of my companions and now my colleagues in clinical practice aren't following now their dreams because they have to attach to an objective more great in their communities. Like you have to study not psychology, just engineer or architecture, or you have to be an accountant because that's what we need here in context. As also our vice president says one time, you don't have to study something that you like, you have to study something that gets you more economical improvements, more incomes. And that's, from my point of view, it's a form of colonization. We are colonized the knowledge and colonize even the professions. We are so deep, in fact, with this thinking because we are a multicultural, pluridiversity and ethnic country directed by a white man who doesn't know the reality. So yes, to answer Andrea directly, yes, this is a form of colonization from my point of view, but also can affect directly for better or worse, I want to believe for better, the objectives, the lives of the communities. I don't know if that makes sense for you.
Does someone want to address something else, or should I proceed with the next question? Okay, thank you. Just something that I want to add is, of course, like thinking that we have to study something to make money is enough colonization, I would say. So yeah, that's so true in at least in some areas of our country and our reality. Yvonne Grau says that the challenge is not between academy and community, like not academic community, but between like teacher and student. Is also like a competence between the fight between between researchers, because of this system demands like a lot of productivity. So she asked, how can a researcher follow or continue their investigation about mental health or any other subject without losing their own? That was like something that I was trying to address in the previous question. Yes. What do you like suggest to the system to keep coherence and humanity? Santiago wants to address to answer this question, so thank you. And if someone
I
else
want to
wants
hear
add.
women's first. Yeah, I'm talking already, so women's first.
I can't really answer because you guys have a totally different context than we have. We just have academic freedom to research whatever we want. And so we don't have administrators bearing down on us. As long as we're productive and we have high quality peer-reviewed publications, that's all that matters. So I think you guys have a different context of some administrators or eggheads in some ministries putting pressure on you. So I can't really speak to that, but you're all in the same boat together, so you could all help each other figure it out.
Well, maybe it's for a researcher is important to know at the beginning of their career or research what we can do, what are our resources on the aim of our investigation. Because, for example, frustration is an emotional response that we feel at different stages of our research life. And I think that one way to deal with this is to know our research scope from the beginning, recognize the context in which we are, you know, the university or the institution or what they want from us. And, and I think that if we know the resources we have and don't again compare ourselves, I think that is a good way to deal with the negative emotions that maybe we can have during our research. So, yeah.
Thank you. Santiago? Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to add that Michel Foucault used to say that the ethics, it's take care about yourself and take care about your impulse and take care about everything drives you to do something that you would not to do. Believing that the research can or cannot affect your mental health is over the question. But for that, to conserve your humanity and to conserve your mental health, even when you are forced by the administration, by all these different dynamics that Tasha highlights to us, that is different from her in the United States, because we actually doesn't have freedom to research. We are forced to research in some fields, we are forced to attach in a lines of investigation that are not our own, but it's about to believe that we have to start to think that the mental health is a huge field to research. We have to find something that minimally we like in that field, to know, to genuinely know about, through curiosity, to methodological rigorosity, through, I don't know, maybe just the nature of the beings, of the living things, about being curious, of the not knowing things. When you go back to the basics and you center your attention about knowing anything that you already know, already don't know, and found it with surprise, with curiosity, I already say, I believe that's a way to conserve your humanity. And you even gonna found, as Seneca says, that you are doing something that you like. And that's a way to preserve and even to walk out in better mental health.
Thank you so much. I think that those are like really complete answers. As Joanna was saying, it's really, really important to not to compare, but try to cooperate. And I think that's a beautiful and important idea that we need to keep, and actually definitely is something that we need to build a strong network of cooperation. We need to forget the concept of competence. We need to start to like build a concept of cooperation in a network, instead of like a network that is not trapping you, but all the contrary, is expanding your arms, like actually helping you out to build more knowledge. And in that sense also, that comes Santiago's idea, and it's like, yeah, definitely, if we keep curious, we can even like extend our research, trying to do interdisciplinary research, and that's something that can help everyone to get better access to resources, because maybe what you don't have, I have it, and then we can just exchange and work together. So I think that is really important. Guys, I'm sorry, it's a very, 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 it was like a very nice conversation, but it's time to give time for Pablo, that has something important to say to the assistants. Just wanting to thank everyone for being here. Of course, our guests were amazing, but also to our audience that was active, participating and asking questions, and for everyone who can join this event. Definitely It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, Santiago, Johanna, Tasha. Thank you for all the knowledge that you are bringing to us and all the lessons that we are going to take notice in our academy and our institutions. I'm going to switch in Spanish to some indications. Muchas gracias a todos. Gracias a quienes se conectaron aquí en Zoom y quienes se conectaron a través de YouTube. En verdad han sido 3 semanas muy, muy interesantes para todos nosotros en Rumbo y en Fulbright con esta actividad en conjunto. Ya ahorita les vamos a volver a poner el enlace en YouTube para que puedan repasar este foro cuando ustedes lo deseen. Si lo quieren compartir con alguien que no pudo estar el día de hoy, lo pueden hacer. Ya ahorita se los pongo ahí en el chat, o si no, si María Clara me está escuchando o Juan Mauricio si me están escuchando, poner ahí en el chat si me ayudan el enlace de YouTube para que lo podamos tener presente. ¿Listo? Como les decíamos, pues este es el foro de cierre, pero afortunadamente tenemos una actividad más en nuestro tour de transferencia social Fulbright Rumbo. Nosotros tuvimos un encuentro de semilleros de investigación al principio de este tour de transferencia y muchos de nuestros estudiantes e investigadores presentaron tantos pósters que abrimos una segunda jornada que va a pasar mañana a las 9 de la mañana, ¿vale? Entonces, a todos los estudiantes que nos enviaron sus pósters están pues invitados a que mañana hagan su presentación. Igual ya nos hemos contactado con ellos para que tengan claro cuáles son sus indicaciones. Y si ustedes nos quieren acompañar, si no pudieron presentar su póster, pero igual quieren ver un poco como el trabajo de los demás representantes de nuestras universidades miembro, lo pueden hacer. Esa invitación la tenemos súper abierta. Ese es el cierre de nuestro tour de la transferencia social, pero vamos a tener más eventos. Hemos estado trabajando de la mano con Campus Party durante los últimos meses. Los vamos a acompañar en el espacio de educación que va a tener Campus Party en su edición digital. Y para quien no conozca Campus Party, pues es un espacio de innovación y tecnología muy grande donde vamos a tener todo tipo de conferencias, charlas, actividades para todo tipo de público. Nosotros estaremos ahí con nuestro propio espacio dedicado a educación, donde vamos a ver muchas de las temáticas que yo creo que hemos hablado acá, de cómo la educación tiene que plantearse de una forma más inclusiva, cómo la educación tiene que plantearse desde la tecnología para tratar de romper barreras, más no por terminar de excluir a las personas. Bueno, varios eventos y actividades que se nos vienen. Ahorita no les puedo contar todo porque estamos terminando de armar todas estas actividades, pero desde ya les boto ahí como esa pequeña campaña de expectativa a este gran evento que estamos organizando con Campus Party. Ellos están trabajando y nosotros también en un concurso que organiza Play Energy para los jóvenes. En nuestra página de internet www.rumbo.edu.co pueden conocer más de este concurso que está dedicado para jóvenes entre 16 y 24 años y que pueden desarrollar varias habilidades en tecnología para tratar de resolver como problemas muy particulares en concreto, como que les están mandando unos retos mensuales y pueden participar por grandes premios que está organizando Campus Party con Enel y Play Energy, ¿vale? Este es un concurso mundial y que realmente ha traído una muy buena acogida a lo largo del mundo. Entonces, a los jóvenes que están escuchándonos en este momento, pues tienen esa oportunidad también de participar. Y la última invitación que les hago es de comunicaciones, que tenemos acá también entre nuestros futuros eventos y actividades, es un workshop en ciudades inteligentes que hemos venido creando desde hace varios años. Estamos en la 4ª edición del ICAI Workshop on Smart Cities, on Smart Sustainable Cities. Nosotros les estamos pidiendo a las personas que nos envíen papers sobre cómo ellos desde sus áreas temáticas están ayudando a consolidar ciudades inteligentes. Quienes nos conozcan en Rumbo saben que una de las grandes líneas de investigación que tratamos de promover son las ciudades inteligentes, que finalmente son las que nos van a ayudar a incluir a más personas dentro de nuestras comunidades, a permitir que estas voces que nosotros hemos hablado hoy, que de pronto no están siendo escuchadas, puedan ser tenidas en cuenta tanto en el sector público como en el sector privado. Entonces, si ustedes tienen algún trabajo en desarrollo que tenga que ver con ciudades inteligentes, pueden enviarnos sus papers a través del enlace que encuentran aquí en la imagen que les estoy compartiendo. ¿Listo? www.rumbo.edu.co/workshop Smart Cities 2021. ¿Listo? El plazo límite del envío de estos papers es el 15 de agosto de 2021. Ese es mi cuña de comunicaciones que suelo hacer al final de nuestros eventos para que tengan súper presente las actividades en las que estamos, pero pues quiero cerrar nuevamente dándole las gracias a todos, a Tasha por todo el apoyo y el trabajo que ha venido haciendo en nuestras distintas actividades de este tour. Gracias a Laura nuevamente por moderar este foro y a nuestros expertos Santiago y Joana que nos acompañaron hoy, brindando pues en verdad unas perspectivas súper interesantes sobre cómo tenemos que cambiar la academia o por lo menos verla desde otros ojos para que podamos incluir a cada vez más voces. No sé si Juan Mauricio quieres agregar algo más para terminar de cerrar este evento.
En verdad, agradecimiento total a todos los que nos acompañaron hoy en el foro, especialmente a Fulbright, a la Universidad EAN, a la Universidad Antonio Nariño y a la Universidad de la Ariandina, que nos acompañaron con sus panelistas, y pues a todo el equipo organizador. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your support, and thanks, Tasha, for all your help during these 3 weeks we were working together. Have a wonderful Thursday, and talk to you later, guys. That's it for me.